Confirmed that Queen Elizabeth, who's 95, spent Wednesday night in hospital for preliminary medical investigations. The Queen had been due to travel to Northern Ireland. The BBC's royal correspondent Nicholas Witchell says journalists had been told the Queen was resting at home.
I think we need to recover a little bit from what happened on Wednesday. We are told that there were preliminary investigations taking place. Well, that would suggest that after preliminary investigations, there may be some further subsequent investigations. We're told that she's in good spirits. That would certainly be in line with her stoical character. But that's a phrase, it's a little bit of a cliche now, this in good spirits. We're told that she's back at Windsor Castle undertaking light duties. Well, we must hope that we can place reliance on what the palace is telling us.
Nicholas Witchell reporting. This is the latest world news from the BBC. The Emergencies Ministry in Russia says at least 15 people have been killed in an explosion at a gunpowder and chemicals plant in Ryazan province, southeast of Moscow. Reports say the only surviving member of their shift was taken to hospital with 80% burns. The Luxembourg Prime Minister Xavier Bettel says Russia is playing a role in the migrant crisis on the European Union's border with Belarus on the second day of an EU summit in Brussels. But Mr Bettel said the migrants were not being treated adequately by some European countries and a balance had to be found so that people were not stripped of their fundamental right to seek asylum. Poland has put up a border fence, sent more soldiers on patrol and authorised border guards to push back anyone crossing unlawfully. Arriving at the meeting, the Lithuanian President, Gitanas Nausėda, agreed that physical borders might be necessary.
Nobody knows what will happen tomorrow. Maybe there will be 3,000, 4,000 or 5,000 migrants staying at the border at the same time or trying to cross the border in different places. Just we will be not ready to take this challenge.
Officials in Somalia say the President and Prime Minister have resolved a dispute, potentially paving the way for the country's long-delayed elections to take place. A rift between President Mohamed Abdullahi Mohamed and Prime Minister Mohamed Hussein Roble was sparked by the disappearance of a female intelligence agent. They then disagreed over who should head Somalia's intelligence agency, and political tension threatened to boil over into factional violence. The Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett is in the Russian seaside resort of Sochi for talks with President Putin, which are expected to focus heavily on Iran. Israeli media say at this first meeting between the two men, Mr Bennett will raise his concerns about Iran's nuclear program and its military presence in Syria. BBC News.
天天在一起，天天用心听，听见台北的声音。FM 93.1幸福永远属于你。
公民总主笔，
方恩格时间。
谁当家？
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 你当家？
谁当家？谁当家？
谁当家？
当家？我当家？你当家？我当家？
我当家？
到底谁当家？你来当家。Welcome to Residence Messenger on Taipei Broadcasting Station. I'm your host, Ross Darrell Feingold. Our guest today is German resident of Taipei, Dr. Ilka Wild. Dr. Wild, or Ilka, welcome to the show.
Hello.
We're so happy to have you because some of your research is in a very fascinating field. It's into the language of the Kanavu people, indigenous people of Taiwan. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the show because you're probably one of the few experts in this area, and I find that really interesting. But let's talk a little bit about yourself first. Where in Germany did you grow up?
Oh, I would say the geographically I'm coming from the very center of Germany, I would say. It is like, if you see the map of Germany, it's pretty in the center, but it is still in the east. So I would say not as lucky as like, I don't know how if I can put it that way, but I was born in Eastern Germany, I would say, yes.
Now, when you were growing up, did you anticipate you would be doing research in Asia? Or what did you want to be when you were growing up in the middle or the eastern part of Germany?
I I actually, my dream was to be an animal doctor, like
a veterinarian.
Yes, yes, this was my childhood dream. I never would. Like the likelihood wasn't that high that when I was born that I can even go to Munich or like West Berlin or so. So this wasn't like totally out of reach.
When I meet a lot of Germans in Taipei, and I don't know if they're telling me the truth or not, but they always seem to tell me that they grew up in these wonderful little towns that are near the forest, and it's just so lovely, and there's outdoors. And was your experience similar? Is that why you thought about being a veterinarian?
Yeah, I actually grew up in a small town. Yes, and it's actually also pretty old. As everything is in that region I'm coming from. So, of course, it looks really beautiful.
It's like the postcard kind of town.
It is like mostly like in the postcards. And yeah, pretty close to the forest. Yeah, it is. When I was a kid, it was like 50,000 people in this town. Not right now, it's less because of all the changes. Like when the wall came down, a lot of people moved away. But yeah, it is still, there are also a lot of changes, but still it looks very beautiful. And after the wall fell down, a lot of renovation was there. So it looks even better than it was in my childhood.
Speaking of your childhood, because later you learned Mandarin and you speak English very well. When you were growing up in Germany, what was it about the education system that helped you later on learn foreign languages? Was there something special about, because you're an educator now, and learning second language is such an important topic here in Taiwan as well. What did they help you with in the education system growing up that led you to be able to learn additional languages?
Oh, this is, yeah. There are several aspects, I would say. First is that Germany, I would say, as a culture is very like rule related. And we do have a long history of linguistics. You know, the Brothers Grimm? These guys were actually linguists. This is like the storytelling was just a byproduct. Like their main goal, I would say, was to learn about the language, the German language, and all the dialects. So, and that's why we have like a broad spectrum of like explaining our language in total. And so that's why we know a lot of like language as a system. So that's why maybe we know a lot about languages at all.
Now, of course, you're a little biased when it comes to this topic because you are a linguist by education. You went to university in a town called Erfurt, which sounds like the place where you grew up, because Erfurt is in the center of Germany, and it's also known for historical buildings and preserved buildings from the Middle Ages. Tell us a little bit about your university experience.
Oh yeah, Erfurt University is not the biggest university, but it is actually the oldest university. It was founded in the like 1379 or so really long time ago, longer than Cologne or so. But then it was closed down in the 19th century and reopened after the wall came down. So it is actually a pretty small university, I would say, but it's in a way unique because it was the first having a similar system than the English system, like having a BA and MA system. Before we had a different one. So this was actually good for me as a student. Yeah.
And I actually checked on the map, and Erfurt is like equidistant, is like 100 to 200 kilometers from many different of the big well-known cities like Berlin or Munich or Frankfurt. What do you do for fun at Erfurt University? What do you do on the weekends there?
Yeah, you can go out as well, but it's not so big, but it's like at a smaller scale, but you do the same things as other young people do, as other students do, going to student clubs, going to pubs, going to theaters, cinemas, is all there. So
I thought you were going to say something like you go in the castles, you look for some ghosts or something like that.
No. You could, but there are no ghosts.
Because again, from what I read, it was a medieval city, right? It just sounds so fascinating.
Yeah, we have like an old church there. You can all visit it. It's all very well preserved. A lot of people do a lot of work on that. So it is, when you can go there, it is really, really beautiful, and it is so not like here.
Well, Taipei is a modern city. Yeah.
It is, and things you can find there are like really hundreds of years old. This is so different to here. So I would say, yeah. But young kids are not caring that much about it. They're just there, and they are living their life like people here as well.
Now, you majored in linguistics. Why did you choose that field? Because it's not a field. You were just talking about young people. Young people, they might want to go into the sciences.
Yeah.
Why linguistics?
Yeah, maybe it sounds a little bit weird, but it was like related to language, which I had always a little bit like a crush on. But I found it really interesting to look at language as a system. It is a little bit technical, but it is very helpful, and it's like, it is a little bit like math. And if you got it, then it is really like the effect that I got it, and this is so unique, I would say. So if you find something out and figure it out by yourself, then it's like if you have like numbers and you have to calculate a lot, and then you got it, and it's like, wow, it's really good. I liked it always.
Is the study of linguistics, especially when somebody enters the field as a university student, is it different when you're studying linguistics in the German language as opposed to in French or English or even Mandarin? And you talked about how it's scientific, it's like math, but is the approach different when you're studying linguistics in different languages?
Linguistics itself is like, there are so many fields. You can specialize in English linguistics, you can specialize in French or Romanistics, all the Romanian languages like French, Italian, are all like one group, one family. And we are actually sharing the same family, like English is a Germanic language, so that's why there are a lot of similarities. But what I actually did was general linguistics, and this is like the system itself, so the grammar itself. And there are not so many people doing that, because many people find it very boring or too technical and not really like rich or like a flourish language or so. It is not like that. It's just like you see it, there's grammar, there are rules, and you have to get it. Yeah, this is totally different than if you have a book and interpret it, and so this is a different thing.
Now, is that frustrating for you in the internet era when people are writing text messages and they don't care about grammar rules anymore, and you're the expert on this? Do you find yourself correcting people?
Sometimes it hurts, I would say. Yeah, sometimes really it hurts. And I have a 10-year-old at home, and he, in the very early stage of his education, he really struggled with all the rules in German. But now it's getting better, but I can feel it is hard, because German language is really regulated, and you have to follow these rules, and otherwise it sounds weird and everybody actually hears it.
You sounds like you're describing when I speak Mandarin. People think I sound weird when I speak in Mandarin.
yeah, but it is like, this is not the same, because it's a foreign language for you. For me as well. For me, English is a foreign language as well. But my son is German native, so, and even those people, and I think with English speakers as well, there are also like certain rules we have to follow, and then people know it, and there is like a sense for the language, but there are rules behind it, and if some people don't care, but I do care, and that's why it is a little bit painful sometimes. But we have also in German like this gender thing, which is a little bit special, because German really distinguishes between the female and the male form, and that's why we have a lot of discussions on that topic. And I'm a little bit more on the conservative side, and then I think, yeah, it's sometimes a really frustrating discussion, I would say.
On a similar topic, what's the view from the German linguistic language experts about loan words? Do they feel strongly they don't want too many English words creeping into everyday usage? Like, for example, in France, they take that very seriously as well, right? They have government, officials looking at this, and they don't want too many English words, which is understandable because they want to preserve the beauty of the language. What about in for the German language experts?
I would say that there are different point of views on that topic. I would say there are a lot of colleagues. Actually, I'm not such a Germanist. Like, I'm not really by education a specialist in German linguistics, but there are some people are really a bit conservative on it, but it's not at all like in French. And there is always language change. This is the way I was educated. So there is always language change, and you cannot really avoid it. If the people do it, if they use an English word or a French word, then they do. You cannot really do anything against it. Yeah,
we shouldn't call the language police on them, right?
No. And it is actually not good. So we have a verb for like Google. We have that verb as well, but it is in the German form as well. So you can put it in like the past tense or whatever. So you can already use it, but it's already inside of the system.
Too late already, it sounds like.
It is okay. I have no problems with that.
Later on, you obtained a master's also at Erfurt University, and your thesis was on variation in the usage of Chinese numeral classifiers. Now as a student of Mandarin, and it's a second language for me as well, among the many things that are difficult is trying to remember those numerical classifiers. Tell us a bit about why you chose this topic and what are some of the things that you researched and you wrote about in your thesis.
Yeah, the thing was that I already mentioned that we in Germany we have like a long history of linguistics and about like language rules and stuff, and so I do rely on that. If I do not understand something, then I have to have that rule, and we have in German for every single particle we have a rule, and there are a lot of exceptions, but these exceptions you can explain. But when I learned Chinese, and I had to use these classifiers, it wasn't clear that I have to use the same classifier for a stick as for a dog. So it is weird in a way. And so I always wanted to know, and nobody could really understandable nobody could really explain it in an understandable way to me how this works.
They just told you that's the classifier.
That's the thing. So is like you as maybe not an educator of English or German or whatever, and somebody asks you why you do this and that, and you say it's just like that. But as a teacher, you usually know. Yeah, but in China or in Chinese language system, this is a little bit not like that. It is just it's a little bit like it's just like this. Yeah, we have that with the gender system in German as well, that you cannot really explain anymore why this is female and this is male, but for the Chinese classifiers, there are some traces in shape or in function that is somehow traceable, but sometimes it doesn't work. So this is for a linguist, this is a very interesting topic to find out why is it like this classification.
Can you give us an example of maybe a really unusual or obscure Chinese character that's used as a classifier?
No, not really. But what I said right now is like you have like to express a dog, one dog. You have to say 一只狗, and the classifier is the same classifier if you would say 一只 xiao. So it's the same, but it is not like a stick is not an animal. A stick is not.
It's not a living.
Yeah,
thing.
it's not a living thing. But the only thing which is a little bit similar is the shape. It is a little bit. I would say it's a little funny because like it depends on the race. Some are like this, like really long, and some are not at all.
Yeah, not every dog breed is long.
Yes, that's what I think. So I found that really interesting.
Now that you're an expert in Chinese numerical classifiers, do you find, we were talking about grammar earlier, do you sometimes find when you're with students in Taiwan or just on the MRT or the bus, do you hear people making mistakes?
No.
So the native speakers, they always get it correct.
I do not. I don't think that my Chinese is good enough to feel the mistakes. And also, Chinese is such like the variation is so broad, and it is depending on from what area in China or even here in Taiwan you are from. Then you cannot really tell as a non-native. I cannot tell. I couldn't tell if this would be correct. Yeah, so I couldn't correct them, not at all.
But do the numerical classifiers, are they the same across the different dialects, or would the different dialect groups use a different classifier?
I was trying to find that out, but it is really hard. And as a student, as an MA thesis, maybe the spectrum is a little bit too broad to really find out about like the speakers' variations. Maybe it's an age topic or education topic could be as well. But for that you need a lot of data, but I didn't have enough time for MA thesis.
Well, as the non-native speaker, for me, of course, it would be easier if everything was just Iga.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, certainly. But since you have all these beautiful classifiers, you should know, like, as a native.
Of course, it adds to the beauty of the language, certainly, yes. Let's switch back to the German language, which you've taught not only in Taiwan, but also in the Czech Republic earlier in your career. Is there a secret for young non-native speakers of German to learn the language, and specifically here in Taiwan? What's the best background or kind of skills that students in Taiwan should have so that they could really succeed at learning German?
I think it is, as with every language, like using it. Yeah, it is. There are two sides of learning a language. Of course, it is good to have knowledge about the system, but even me as a linguist, I do not learn a language the linguist way. Yeah, I used to learn some Japanese, and Japanese had really beautiful grammar, but I had a lot of trouble to learn it because it is, for me, very hard to use.
I found Mandarin to be much easier to learn than Japanese.
That's
actually.
right. That's true. Totally. Because all like in Japanese the verb is at the very end, and for me this is a problem. And the way I would learn a language is like just speaking it, using it, listening to it, and speakers or learners are different. Yeah, so some need really the system, some need like to write everything down, but I think the most successful people are just using the language. This is what I would say.
For students in Taiwan, though, is learning German, all other things being equal, the same number of hours in class or same opportunity to watch foreign language programs on the internet, all other things being equal, is German more or less difficult for Taiwan students to learn versus other second languages, whether English, Japanese, French, Spanish?
Maybe it looks like it, but I'm not convinced, because if you really, I know quite a few people here in Taiwan with excellent German skills, and even some of my students already in the university already at the second year, third year, sometimes great, yeah. But then mostly these are the guys really using the language, and for my taste, it is sometimes but I think here in Asia, in total, relying too much on the written language.
What about the textbooks that you used in class, or you see other German language instructors using in Taiwan? Is there something you would change about the textbooks, or there really are good teaching materials for learning German language?
We are in a very good situation right now that we do have a lot of several kind of materials. So we can make use of like all the sources in the internet, films, audio. This is the thing, or these are the ways a language works. And a textbook is mostly boring. Yeah, it is sometimes can be fun, but usually you have a lot of pages and it's already heavy. Yeah, you do not want to look at it. But so I try always when I am in class, I always try to include like audios or internet or films, and because then you really listen to the real language. And this is much better than, surely you need some explanation, but first there comes the question and then you look it up. I would say it's like that.
Well, we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll talk more about being German in Taipei, and we'll talk about your research into indigenous languages as well. You're listening to Residence Messenger on Taipei Broadcasting Station.
如有长照服务需求、长照特别扣除额问题，请拨打1966长照专线，5分钟内通话免付费。一通电话让长期照顾管理专员协助申请长期照顾服务及解答长期照顾特别扣除额相关问题。以上内容由台北市政府卫生局提供。
不开车，黄色嘟嘟安全多，应酬喝酒不过量，安全回家最上道。爸爸要平安回家哦。
喝酒不开车，开车不喝酒哦。让我们一起尊重生命，拥抱亲情。
亲爱的民众，提醒您定期清除排油烟机内部油垢。烹煮食物时，切忌分心做其他事情，并注意人离火熄。且厨房附近应设置灭火器，操作时保持适当距离。当厨房火灾时，严禁以水灭火。油锅起火也千万不要移动油锅，以免翻覆造成火势扩大延烧。以上内容由台北市政府消防局提供。
亲爱的朋友，您还在吸烟吗？快拿着健保卡到戒烟门诊或拨打戒烟专线0800636363。提醒您，最近兴起的电子烟、加热烟，因为没有浓浓的烟臭味，就被认为无害。其实已经证实，新兴烟品都有二手烟及三手烟的危害，甚至还有爆炸的风险。我是义工蔡依林，所有烟品都 get out。我拒烟，我骄傲。
教育部提醒大家，开学防疫不松懈，请家长每日量孩子体温，如有发烧请就医，并在家休息。上课时要全程佩戴口罩，采固定座位、固定成员。使用空调时保持通风良好。用餐时采个人套餐，使用隔板或维持社交距离，不并桌、不交谈。校园防疫不松懈，安心学习有保障。以上广告由教育部提供。
大家好，我是奥运举重国手郭幸存。举重不是硬碰硬，而是找对方法去面对它，就跟防疫一样。面对疫情，我们可以扎稳基本功，勤洗手、戴口罩，维持社交距离。面对未知，我们可以谨慎以对，主动查证讯息，避免恐慌。让我们团结抗疫，一起为台湾拿下防疫金牌。台湾加油！
有政府，请安心。以上广告由行政院与疾管署提供。
谁当家？
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 你当家？
谁当家？谁当家？
谁当家？
谁当家？我当家。
你当家？
我当家。
我当家。
到底谁当家？你来当家。
To Residence Messenger, our guest today is Dr. Ilka Wild, a professor of linguistics and expert on some of the indigenous language in Taiwan, and also an instructor of the German language here in Taipei. Let's talk a little bit about being German in Taipei. Why is Taiwan an attractive place for people from Germany to move to live here, to work here?
Oh, I don't know if I can say it for everybody. It's really hard because for me it was actually not love at first sight, I would say. As a student, when I came here 15 or 16 years ago already, then I did struggle a lot with the language and with everything. But then, yeah, it became a home because people are very friendly usually. It is very safe. It is so different to everything I knew before. So that's why it caught my attention somehow. So, but I don't know. I know some people, like back in my university, when they were here and then they left and I said, it was good, but then I am good being home again. So I cannot tell for everyone.
When you tell Taiwan people that you're from Germany, what are some of the frequent responses you get?
Which was really surprising for me was that they, like the second question, like it's like the usual taxi driver conversation. They ask me where you're from, and then I say I'm from Germany. And a lot of times the second question is already east or west.
Still today? They
yes,
ask that.
still. And when
do you remind them? Well, we had the unity.
Yeah, they know. They know. They are impressively informed mostly. When I was doing fieldwork in the mountains, central Taiwan, I was at a tea farm buying some tea, and there was an old lady. There was a little shop. An old lady only speaking I think it was Tayu, and her son was also in his 60s, I would say, and we had that conversation, and he was asking me about like, where you're from, Germany, which part, and then we were talking about it, and this was really, I was amazed because, yeah, it's so far away, but it's still a topic here. But I think for people here in that specific situation with mainland and everything, so it is a little bit related. So that's why it is always something like an entrance conversation.
What about any cultural references, or do they say they're a fan of one of the German football clubs or something like that?
Sure, they do. But this is also very individually. So this is sometimes they like a certain music. It depends on the age. Or sometimes they tell me, I have been already to Munich or to Berlin. Yeah, but really the East and West thing, this is...
The politics.
This is... Yeah.
Speaking of which, early October 9th, was German Unity Day. Tell us a bit about what it means for German people in 2021, and especially you said you grew up in the eastern part, and you were a child during the final years of East Germany. So for people of your generation who might still remember, or the next generation who don't even remember, who were born too young or after the wall came down, what does German Unity Day mean nowadays for younger people?
It is still a topic. And like even 31 years after, it is still there. It is, the wall is not there anymore, like physically, but there is still some kind of wall sometimes in the heads. And sometimes people think right now this is again growing because it is a phenomena you find all over the world, that some regions are a little bit richer and some are not, and so that's why they struggle, and that's why, and the reason for that in Eastern Germany certainly is that they still have to recover from 40 years of dictatorship, and that's why it is still there. And it is for very young people, like my son I told you about, is 10 years old, and he cannot really imagine that there used to be a wall between the two Germanys, but it's still there. My parents told him about, yeah. So, and that's why maybe we can later talk about my book. That's why I wrote that book with another author, because this is still something we have to remember. And also there are a little bit like in Germany, in East Germany especially, like the right-wing parties grow a lot, so that's why people are asking why, what happens there, and so this is always still a topic.
What about for Germans who live overseas, such as yourself? What are the views on some of these issues? Do you have a somewhat different view because you're looking at these issues from far away, and as you said, you're raising a German child, but overseas? What's the different perspective versus somebody who lives in Germany and a German citizen such as yourself who lives overseas?
I have to say that the 9th of October is like a weird date. Not the 9th, the 3rd. The 3rd of October is actually our unification day, but it is like a synthetic one, because actually the wall fell down at the 9th of November 1989, but it is the same date as Reichskristallnacht in the 30s, so that's why they couldn't take this specific date. So that's why the German government had to pick another one. But it is really hard. So for us, we do not. Most of the people actually with that specific date, 3rd of October, do not really relate too much, yeah? And if you are here, or whether you are here or at home, it's a little bit the same. I would say that it is totally different maybe to French people, because their national day is something super, super important. I think
a long history.
Yes, and I think for you guys as well, like 4th of July.
Sure, also with a long history.
Yes, but for us, it's not the same. I think when we are here abroad, of course we celebrate if it's possible. This year it wasn't possible, but last year it was possible. It was a big event, so we go there. But it's, I think more important is Christmas, I would say. And this is sometimes more important for us abroad because this is so, it gives us you a feeling of like thinking of your people at home. Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your research into the Kanukanavu language. First, tell us who they are.
The Kanakanavu people this is like an ethnic group here in Taiwan. It's a group of people about like 200, and native speakers are even less, are like not even 10 anymore. And there is a little village in central Taiwan called Dakanua, and it is Namasha region. So it is actually, I don't know if you ever heard about it. It is in the total center of Taiwan. It belongs to Kaohsiung City somehow, but it takes ages to get there because it is really far away. And then they are located there.
What were your motivations to study their language, or how did you become interested in this topic?
For linguists, it is always very interesting to find a language which is so under-researched. Yeah, and since I was trained as a general linguist from a very, very influential and very good professor back in Germany, he is actually a specialist in Maya languages in the Americas. And he did a lot of research for decades. And so it is always very enlightening to find such a language and to figure something out on it and to write it down. And then I got in contact with that language, and then I just did it.
And your PhD thesis was voice and transitivity in Kanukanavu. Well, for those of us who are not linguists, what does that mean? What did you study, or what did you write about in your thesis?
This is the title is a totally linguistic one. It's actually what I did is I wrote actually down the grammar, like a sketch grammar, or a little bit like the core grammar, that people can finally understand what this language is about, or the structure of the system. And voice and transitivity has something to do with like a sentence which you have in every language, because you have to express what happens to whom. So I hit you this is a transitive sentence, and this kind of relation you have to express, or to be able to express, in every language, because this is so essential. But how you do it is, or can be, super different in the languages all over the world. And Kanakanavu is special. It's so different to what we know. So this was interesting for me to find it out, because it wasn't figured out yet before I learned about it.
And how does their language differ from some of the other indigenous languages spoken in Taiwan?
Yeah, there are a lot of relations, and it is special in a way because it has a so-called voice system, and here they have voice systems with 4 voices, sometimes 6 voices even. Kanakanavu has only 2. It is a little bit like the active-passive system, I would say, if you can imagine this. This is a little bit, this is the only way to describe it to someone who has not get in contact with this kind of relation. Yeah, active-passive system, I would say.
Before we talk specifically about saving the Kanukanavu language, what about the languages for the larger indigenous tribes? Are those going to be preserved? Or are you optimistic that there's enough education, enough media where they use these languages that they could be saved?
There are here a lot of efforts in Taiwan to preserve or to take care of those languages, and also about the culture. So they do help the people here to maintain. This is what they can do. They do even have a TV station and a lot of educational material and stuff. As a linguist, I cannot really do so much about it. What I can do, I already did, is to give knowledge on it, and write it down in a way that people can use it. But that's it. I cannot force people using it, because actually a language can only be preserved when the people use it as a tool for communication.
And what about the Kanukanavu language specifically? You mentioned that there's so few native speakers left.
Yeah.
What could be done to preserve this language?
The first step would be that actually the people use it again. Otherwise, we cannot do anything about it. This is the only way. And if they decide not to do, then we cannot do. Yeah, that's it, and we have to accept it. What we could do is to write it down and to show how different language can be. This is what I can do as a linguist, as a generalist linguist. But this is all, yeah.
And are there younger people who are willing to still learn within the Kanukanavu community, who are still willing to learn the language?
There is a group of women, like maintaining the culture and like different ways of agriculture, or like singing songs, or they doing something about it. But it is difficult, because on the other hand, chances in life is always always related to good command of Mandarin, and so that's why they teach their kids in Mandarin. I can understand that.
So it sounds like, and please correct me if I'm wrong, some of the indigenous languages in Taiwan will be preserved, but not for every tribe, and it's going to be a challenge for some of them.
Yes, yeah. It is like that. And also, it's compared to other languages, the bigger languages are also very small. Yeah, there are maybe 100,000 speakers. This is not a lot. Yeah.
Is that the same? The observation you just made, would that also apply in other locations around the world, where you would say 100,000 speakers? That might not be enough to preserve a language, because for the people who are not experts like myself, that sounds like enough to sustain it.
No, I don't think so. We will lose a lot of languages, thousands of languages, and all over the world through the next decades. And this is sad. We cannot do anything about it. And I think that globalization is even pushing this a little bit more forward in that direction. Yes.
Yeah, too much Netflix, maybe.
But those channels are actually now producing different shows in different languages already. Yeah. So this is it is like a trend. You cannot really stop it.
Tell us a bit about your book, which was recently published, and tell us the name and what the content is about.
Yeah, like this is a German book, so it's only in German available, and the translation is: Are we really unified, or are we really unified? I would say, and it is a book about like 30 years or 31 years right now. Of reunification and how far we came yet. And I didn't do it alone. I did it with an author, a journalist from West Germany, and we of course have different perspectives on that topic. And so we try to describe how it is living in East Germany, how it is, how West Germans look at it, and also sometimes things which are totally unknown for either that side or either that side. So this is because we have to understand each other in order to get along.
And did living in Taiwan influence what you wrote in the book?
Maybe it made me see it a little bit more clear, because from the distance sometimes you see the things a little bit clearer, and then the majority of the book, my part of the book, I wrote here. And so from distance, this is sometimes not a bad idea, that you are not distracted from everyday conversations, so you really can recognize and think again and again. I found it a good thing to do it here.
And we're almost out of time. So before we go, could you give us a preview of
your next book or some other research that you might be working on?
Actually, what I do right now is a little bit different direction. I do podcasting right now for sustainable news, which this is the trend of today. And this is also very enlightening for me because we do record what is actually already done or on what path we are already. And because many people don't know about it, we are always hearing news that we are all gonna die soon because of the global warming. But when you see there's so much going on and so much like new technologies, new materials, and this is, I find extremely interesting.
And where can people get your podcast?
On every platform, I would say, yeah. It is on Spotify, it's on Apple, it's everywhere. The name is Ecozentrisch, but it is all in German. It's for the German market. But it's, it is available wherever you want. It's a weekly show.
Terrific. Well, Dr. Wild, thank you so much for coming to Residence Messenger today.
Thanks for having me.
You've been listening to Residence Messenger on Taipei Broadcasting Station.